please come. You have other members of the director.
It's off, yeah.
Suresh, where is Suresh? Suresh, please come.
Professor Kanchan, Professor Suresh and Professor Vijay were the jury members who adjudicated the entries that we received. No, that's right. That is there in the plan. Now I request Professor Suresh to speak about the jury and the selection of the logo.
So, a very good afternoon to our chief guest professor, Graziano Krätli, to our honorable VC, Professor Appara, and to one and all in the audience here. First of all, I would like to thank the IOE team for requesting a member of the jury of the logo design competition to speak on this occasion. The jury members included Professor Kanchan Malik from Department of Communication, Professor Vijay Bhaskar Marishetty from School of Management Studies, and myself from the Department of Fine Arts in the university. We had a very different perspectives and approaches to this task, and we met several times with IOE team to identify and clarify the symbolic elements that would represent our vision of eminence. After the open call for the applications, the jury of logo design committee received 24 entries for this competition. Sorry if I'm gone wrong with the numbers. A competition for from the different schools of university. Eventually, we settled on 2 logos out of these rest of the entries. The design of 2 finalists have entirely different qualities and strengths. We were able to convince both the designers, Ms. Anaka Ajit and Akash Dinkar, to collaborate and work on the logo that we have with us today. I would describe what we have identified and what it stands with. That is, the open book in the lower half of the logo suggests the opening of young minds to the rich worlds of learning in libraries, laboratories, and studios, the space of knowledge and learning. The second, the collection of pens in the center of logo hints a spirit of teamwork as scholars from different schools, disciplines of the university come together to collaborate in spirit of study and inquiry. The search in the university tries to see the world in stark black and white terms, while paying equal attention to the gray zones in between. The 5 pence slowly mutate into a crown that represents the highest glory of university that is committed to pushing the frontiers of knowledge. Finally, the world of books, research, and learning is placed in an open-ended foliage, wreath as a reminder of the glory and abundance of natural beauty that makes up the campus of the University of Hyderabad. This is its logo that aligns closely with IOE vision. I take this opportunity to congratulate the designers, Ms. Anaka and Akash, for the coming together to create it. I also thank all the participants of the enthusiastic participation in this competition, for even though they were not officially selected, their entries were invaluable for us to draw on their ideas to formulate the final design of this logo. Thank you for the opportunity to have been part of this important and historical milestone in the history of the University of Hyderabad.
Now I request Anaga and Ajit to come to the stage again, please. We will cut a cake in one.
Ingredients వస్తుందా ఓయ్ రా
Thank you. Now I request Professor Pramod Nair, Director IOE, to speak about the IOE.
Good afternoon. Thank you first to Graziano for dealing with the unexpected with considerable ease. He had not, I think, bargained for being part of this ceremony when he agreed to deliver his talk. And in addition to delivering his talk here and being participant in this ceremony, he's also been outsourced to other universities. So he's delivering a talk later at Pune as well. Those of you who have heard me before on the IOE can go to sleep. It's that room anyway. But as we stand here, plans for implementation are underway. The IOE team met at various points in the last several months, heads and deans of various schools. We moved on to meeting faculty across schools as well, and then the research scholars of various schools, taking inputs from them about what they have in mind, what they would like us to keep in mind about the IOE's implementation, its program of action. And as of now, plans are being put together to see how best it can be leveraged. The purpose, as I've said before, is to ensure that there is a definite movement upwards in the quality of education that students who walk through the gates of this university will receive, from the integrated all the way to their doctoral programs, so that students leaving this institution will become the most sought after employees for companies, universities, institution which is looking to hire our students. The plans will take time, as all Sarkari plans do, to fructify. But the IOE is in no particular hurry from what we can see of the government's movements in this direction either. So we are also not in a particularly great hurry, though we prefer to have it systematically organized, which we are trying to do. Mostly it's just the 5 of us, Kailash, Devashish, I don't know whether you met that team, Kailash, Devashish, Sharmishta and Chandrasekhar. We do the running around, we cry on each other's shoulders frequently. But as of now, we see the IOE as shaping up is based on the inputs we have received. And those inputs have also in many ways been tied to the original application, which was prepared over a considerable period of time, as many of you know. There are several of you in the audience here who contributed to that. We now have a website. We have a new Spider-Man. That's the man who operates the web. That is Vasuki. So I tend to refer to him as Spider-Man because he controls the web. You know, if you think of it as a very magnanimous and an event of great magnitude, both, because he seems to find time to do that as well. So thanks to Vasuki for doing a lot of the stuff which we would otherwise not be able to pull off. We are very grateful to the various officers of the university who have helped us at every stage, starting with our controller of examinations, Devesh Nigamji, the 2 pro-vice chancellors, Ashish, who, the advantage with Ashish is you can yell at him endlessly and he doesn't seem to lose his cool. That I think is part of the training of being a public relations officer. The Vice Chancellor, Secretariat, Mr. Krishna, Mrs. Rupa and others. Colleagues across the university whom we have consulted formally and informally to help us plan things, to help us set up meetings, deans of the various schools who have circulated things like that, heads of departments. But most of all, we are extremely happy to look at the student responses to our meetings. When we had the first meeting with scholars of the sciences, I think it went on for about 3 hours. We hope the IOE will become something that will be part of how we think about our institution, how we think about what we want to do and how we do it. And for that, we are extremely grateful to all of you. For example, I see one member of the IQSC is here. But we hope to work with them as well, and several others who have formally and informally been part of this journey so far. It's still very early. We have no idea where we are going, but as the mock turtle told Alice, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which way you go, which road you take. We are more or less in that direction. We're very grateful also. I am personally very grateful to the members of the IOE team. A lot of work seems to get done on this, which at some point is very effective because we still manage to get a lot of their time. Thank you all for coming. I know you're looking forward to the main event, that is the Institution of Eminence lecture, which the series which kickstarts with Graziano's talk today. Thank you.
I request the Vice Chancellor, Professor Apparao, to say a few words.
Distinguished speaker, the first speaker in the IOE lecture series that we are starting today. Faculty colleagues, officers, staff, students, and guests. This is a very, very special occasion in the university, because many of us know we got this institution of eminence, and there are many things that are planned. I know the 5 members and the people around them, how much of a time they are working these days for the past maybe 3 months or more than that. A lot of things there are being planned. We want to see how best this opportunity given to us can be utilized to become one of the best universities in the world. That's the objective. In the process, there are many things that are being planned to build infrastructure, which may be lecture hall complexes, which may be central instrumentation laboratories, which may be some research labs, which could be other equipment, research equipment which are not available in the university as of now, and a few minor things that may be also added along as per the requirements. And we want to have an increased research activity. As such, we are recognized for our research. Our university is recognized as one of the best research universities in the country. But we want to take it to the next level. Maybe it's in terms of the, if not in the number of publications, but in terms of quality of publications that come from the university. And for the students, as Pramod has explained, after a series of meetings with research students, they are coming up with plans. And for master students, we have made some plans. And for the staff, also we have plans how to take advantage of this institution of eminent status to reach to the next level and become one of the best in the world. I am here more to congratulate the students and thank the jury for helping the university in designing finally this logo. And second important thing is to launch this IOE lecture series. We all know that there are 2 other kinds of lecture series that we have on the campus. Apart from the lectures that happen in departments and schools on a regular basis, at university level we have 2 different series. One of it has been there for more than 2 decades, that is Distinguished Lecture Series. And the second one is of more recent origin, that is Alumni Lecture Series. That's one place where we want to strengthen our bonds with our alumni, and some of you sitting here as the students today, we would like to see some of you coming back and giving lectures under Alumni Lecture Series at some point in time in your life. And the third and most recent, and which is being launched today, is the Institution of Eminence Lecture Series. And we are fortunate to have a speaker who not only has links with our faculty in different works, but also has worked on other poetry that just now Professor Vinod has brought to my notice. He has other link with the university, I would say, and it is not easy to get such kind of a person who is organically linked to this university in many ways to be the first speaker for this IOE lecture series. These lectures we would be having from now at regular intervals whenever we are able to rope in a distinguished scholar, and when they have time and when they are able to spend maybe a half a day or a day with us and share their experience through their lectures. So this will be the third lecture, and I'm happy to inaugurate this third lecture series at the university under the banner of Institution of Eminence. I don't want to take more time. I only congratulate the IOE team for planning this lecture series as part of the activities of the IOE, which will go a long way in inviting the distinguished scholars from different parts of the world to deliver talks in the university at regular intervals. Thank you very much and good luck to all, and I thank the speaker for accepting our invitation and spending time with us. And of course, Pramod says that he has even outsourced his services to the sister university in Pune. That's fine, and as long as he has time and he can share his expertise, that's something, a good gesture on his part, that he is able to share, give a talk over there as well. Welcome to university and welcome to this talk. Thank you very much.
Our speaker for the first IOE lecture is Graziano Krätli. He wears many hats. He's a translator, he's an author, and he's an editor. He works as a librarian at the Yale University. He's published articles, reviews on literary subjects, particularly on modern and contemporary Anglophone literature in India. Professor Krätli today will speak on From Research Materials to Research Data and Back. So I invite Professor Krätli to come in this lecture.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm very, very honored to be here today, almost embarrassingly honored, and also very grateful to all the people who made it possible. Professor Apparao, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Pramod Nayar, who organized this event and were kind enough to invite me. And it would be unfair not to thank also Professor Apparao, because it all started with an exchange between the two of us. When I mentioned that I would come to India around this time, she suggested that I would give away the prize, the Srinivas Rai Poetry Prize. And at that time, no, that was the only engagement that I was considering. And then what was supposed to be a vacation turned into a lecture tour. But I'm very happy, and actually it's a very pleasant thing. As some of you know, I'm a librarian by profession. I'm also a researcher. I'm not a researcher in library field. I published a couple of things in that field, and one I will mention it in connection to this talk. But my research field has been mostly in two different areas. One was the preservation of West African Arabic manuscripts from the point of view of a librarian. and that cycle of my interest that came out of library school basically is concluded. I said what I had to say, and then I moved to what is closer to my heart, which is literary studies, and I've been, for the past 10 years, more or less, I've been writing about Anglophone poetry of India, mostly post-colonial. So I'm wearing these two hats. It's not as bad as in the case of Rayaprol that says I'm an engineer by day and a poet by night. There is not such a sharp distinction in my case, a librarian and researcher, and a librarian who assists and helps researchers in my institution, who may be students, who may be faculty members, may be visiting scholars, but also at the same time somebody who does his own research. So, and this is rather unusual, almost sort of split personality, professionally speaking, because in these two, under these two hats, I'm on a daily, almost on a daily basis, I'm not forced, but I find myself considering the same topic or the same approach from two different points of view. From the point of view of the person who needs to collect materials, generate research data, and eventually, hopefully, publish them in original format, but also in the position of the person who has to look at research materials, research data, and their outcomes, which may be publication forms, from the point of view of somebody who is involved in the preservation life cycle. Which is what a librarian, or a curation life cycle, which is what a librarian or a data curator, as sometimes are called today, or information scientist, does on a daily basis for his work. So I'm going to try, I see this talk today as for all of us, as an exercise in awareness. Most of you are researchers. There may be a few librarians, I don't know, in the audience, I hope so, but most of you, I see you as researchers. And I'm going to use the word researcher without distinction between a student, a faculty, or a research scholar. It doesn't matter at what stage you are in your career, you're all doing some kind of research. This is as we heard, is a highly, very well considered research academic institution. So research is a very important component of what this institution does. I will look with you today at the very basics of a research. What you collect and generate while you're doing research. And you're not going to pay the same attention to this research data as I would, or a librarian would, because that's for you is the material that you use to produce something else. So it's not that important as long as it's what you are looking for a citation, for a result in a lab. But it's important, especially if you want to increase the quality or the quantity of your publication. It's important that you become increasingly aware of what you generate as you go along your research and how you take care of that, because you are dealing with increasing quantity of information and in different formats, and you will need to know how to handle it, how to organize it, how to quickly retrieve it, how to reuse it, use it and reuse it, and if need be, how to discard part of the information that you collect while doing research. So, as I said before, I don't do research in the field of library science, but about 3 years ago I was involved in a project masterminded by an organization called Ithaca. And Ithaca is an organization that produces reports on academic and research practices in different fields, using anthropological and ethnographical field inquiry techniques, methodologies. In our case, I work for the Yale Divinity Library, and in 2016, they launched a research project in the research practices of faculty and scholars in religious studies. And 18 institutions across North America were involved. We were supposed, three of us in the Yale Divinity Library worked on a faculty in our field, and we were supposed to select about 15 faculty members in both the religious studies department and the divinity school. Interview them. We had a set of about 20 questions in different fields, and collect the results and generate a report. One of I dealt with the field, the more technologically oriented questions, and one of them was about research data. And when we got to that point, when I asked the question, how do you organize, how do you take care of your research data? The typical, especially from older, more senior faculty members, but also younger ones, they looked at me with a blank stare, and they seemed to be disoriented, and they didn't know, either they didn't know what I was talking about. It wasn't the word research, of course, it was the word data that created a complication. Or sometimes they asked me, but isn't that stuff that scientists deal with? So I find that in the humanities, there is, especially in the humanities, there is still a wide idea, wide conception of data as something that doesn't pertain to humanities, is something that is expressed in figures and numbers, and therefore falls into the realm of physical or natural scientists. It is true that a lot of definitions of research data involve numbers, but I don't think it's entirely correct, or it's a very restrictive limitation. These pictures, I chose this picture because this gives an idea of, the most humanists themselves consider the field in which they work as a field entirely, a house of books, or a den of books. And that's what they deal with, and that's what is their field, and their resources are of a more traditional printed book kind, or manuscripts. To go back to the title of my, there are two terms, from research materials to research data and back. In reality, there is a third component to the picture, and it comes before either of them, is what I would call a research topic. So I would describe the movement from one to the next is a three-part, or is a triptych, is a three-part movement. There is a research topic. I'm not using the word research subject because it has a specific connotation in the social sciences or in the medical science, but the topic is what you are working on. It's the subject, the object of your research. It can be, the role of women in Shakespeare, or whatever. Research materials are what you are approaching to explore this topic. So in the case of Shakespeare or whatever, you have the works, Shakespeare works, or some of them. You have books, a lot of them, about that aspect of Shakespeare work, and that will be your research materials. And then you have a lot of other materials that could be useful to explore that topic. And then you start making notes, and you start writing things, you start collecting documents online, you start in different formats, and you find yourself with this baggage, growing baggage of knowledge, of information that you have somehow to filter, to master, in order to write your article or your book. those are actually the research, in the case of a humanist, are research data. And if I can use a culinary example, think about yourselves as chefs in a restaurant. And you work in the kitchen and you get all ingredients from, your research topic would be the item on the menu that you're going to work on. So in order to do that, you collect all kinds of ingredients from outside, and those will be your research materials. Then you're actually putting together these ingredients is your work, but you're still working in the kitchen. And the kitchen has a pantry, and the pantry, we can use it as a metaphor for your storage and organization of data. Where do you put your data? Where do you keep your ingredients? And then when you're done, you go out and you present the dish in the eating part of the restaurants, which is the public. That's the publication side of things. When you are completed with you're ready to present yourself to the public, then you go out and you serve the dish. So now we settled the issue that research data is not something that pertains only to the sciences. It pertains to all kinds of research. As long as you do research of some kinds, you're gonna generate, you're gonna collect and generate. I find the word collect most commonly used, but I will also say generate, because some data you generate yourself. You're not just collecting them. So there are different ways of approaching a definition. One is etymological, and I'm not gonna read it for you, but is actually very interesting that it comes from a Latin term that itself, through the Greek, comes from Indo-European and Sanskrit, but there is the element of to give. Dare is actually the Italian word for to give. So it's something that from you moves to somebody else in form of a research result. And there are a number of technical, I could have continued and added more and more, but I think I kept myself under control to 5, slightly different to show some aspects, some features of a definition that is not entirely something that you can pin down. It changes according to the organization, to the angle. So in the bold face is I added to emphasize some aspect of each definition. So the Digital Curation Centre, which is a British institution, defines research data as a reinterpretable representation of information in a formalized manner suitable for communication, interpretation, or processing. Examples of data include a sequence of bits, a table of numbers, the characters on a page, the recording of sounds made by a person speaking, or a moon rock specimen. Another definition from the Information Services Research Data Service at the University of Edinburgh is research data, unlike other types of information, is collected, observed, or created for purposes of analysis to produce original research results. So keep in mind, collected, observed, or created. Created is the equivalent of what I was saying before, generated. The third definition from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, another British institution, research data is defined as a recorded factual material, commonly retained by and accepted in the scientific community as necessary to validate research findings. Although the majority of such data is created in digital format, all research data is included irrespective of the format in which it is created. The yellow highlighting is a secondary form of highlighting in the way that I organize, because recorded factual material is the primary thing that I wanted to point your attention to. But the second one is the fact that increasingly everything is in digital format, isn't it? But depending on your research, depending on your field of research, you may have to deal with very physical, very traditional materials, including the rock specimen mentioned in the previous example. Number 4, this is from the glossary of archival and records terminology. So this is a listing of is basically vocabulary of technical terms used in the archival field. Facts, ideas, or discrete pieces of information, especially when in the form originally collected and unanalyzed, data often is used to refer to information in its most atomized form. The raw data. As number of facts that have not been synthesized or interpreted, such as the initial readings from a gauge or obtained from a survey. In this sense, data is used as the basis of information, the latter distinguished by recognized patterns or meaning in the data. The phrase raw data may be used to distinguish the original data from subsequently refined data. Data is independent of any medium in which it is captured. So keep that in mind, independent of any medium in which is it captured. Data is intangible until it has been recorded in some medium. Even when captured in a document or other form, the content is distinct from the carrier. And I think this is the last one. From Nature, the publisher, and again British, research data comprises research observations or findings, such as facts, images, measurements, records and files in various formats, and can be stored in databases. So, after the definition part, I'm going to move through different stages in what is called data management life cycle. So, collection, storage, and then use, preservation, etc. It's very limited set of stages, but each one is very relevant to everybody's research. So this may be the way you collect. I've been in researchers' offices that are much worse than this, but it makes it very difficult to find that particular note that you need desperately to complete the article that is due tonight at midnight. So there are different ways of collecting data. As you will notice from these descriptions, some of them tend towards the social and the physical and the natural sciences, but let's keep in mind that they apply very much to humanities, and based on my own experience as a researcher, I will try to stay closer to the humanities fields, also because I don't want to expose myself to aspects of the issue that are not familiar to me and I will not be able to explain properly. So there are observational data captured in real time and usually irreplaceable. For example, sensor data, survey data, sample data, and neuroimages. A lot of things that mentioned in this definition are totally beyond my experience, or maybe beyond some of your experience. It will may be very familiar to some of you because of the fields in which you operate. Experimental data are captured from lab equipment, often reproducible, but it can be expensive. For example, gene sequences, chromatograms, and toroid magnetic field data. You tell me what it is, I don't even know what it is. Simulation data, generated from test models, where model and metadata are more important than output data. For example, climate models and economic models. They can be derived or compiled data, transformed from pre-existing data points, reproducible if lost, but it would be expensive. Example are data mining, compiled databases, and 3D models. There are reference or canonical data, a static or organic conglomeration or collection of smaller peer-reviewed datasets, most probably published and curated. For example, gene sequence databanks, chemical structures, or spatial data portals. And there are different types of data and formats. And this, I will bring you all back to 200 years ago, but this is, or 300 years ago, but these are actually materials you may have to work on. Your research may focus on the publication of the journals of a certain scientist, or you may explore a topic that was first explored by a certain field biologist, and the only way that you can access that kind of information is through the original manuscripts, if they've not been published. In the case of, I just published the correspondence of Raya Pearl and William Carlos Williams. The letters were manuscript and typescripts. So, just to mention a few basic type and formats of data: the documents, spreadsheets, laboratory notebooks, field notebooks, diaries. In the case of the image we just saw, that was probably a field journal of some biologist. Questionnaire, transcripts, code books, audio tapes, videotapes, photographs, films, test responses, slides, artifacts, specimens, samples. And this is another very traditional format. Now, if you go back to this list, most of these items listed here are not necessarily they don't necessarily belong to sciences, social sciences, or fields. In the humanities, you may have to deal with materials that are documents, spreadsheets, and more. You may deal, or you may collect a lot of, increasingly more data in digital format, but you may have to deal with things like that. Manuscript journals, photographs, collection of photographs, or video recordings or tape records, analog recordings. So the list continues: collection of digital outputs, data files, database contents, video, audio, text, images, models, algorithms, scripts, contents of an application, input, output, log file for analysis software, simulation software, schemas, methodologies and workflows, standard operating procedures and protocols. Analog audio cassettes. What you do with we saw three different kinds of very traditional non-digital material. We have the field journal of a biologist, a collection, an album of photographs, and now it is a collection of audio tapes. You are doing research, you run into material like this. You're gonna read the journals, you're gonna look at the photographs, and you're gonna listen to the tapes, and then you move on. But no, that's not what you do, because you may need them in 6 months, while the book is underway, while the article is being drafted. So you need somehow to, the best solution is to convert them, or to have them converted, or to have some of them converted for your purposes. If you are lucky enough to have research funds available, it's not incredibly expensive. The best practices approach is to have this material converted. At that point, it's going to be, to some extent, it's going to be yours. So you return the original material, which you will not be able to take with you anyway, but you have a digital copy, which sometimes may be even more eloquent, may be usable than the original format, and that's going to be yours. It's going to sit on your hard drive. In the case of in my case of the letters between Raya Pearl and William Carlos Williams, I requested two large research institutions to scan them. There was a small amount to be paid, but they scan and they send me the high resolution images, which are now on my computer, stored and backed up, and I can use for different purposes. Of course, once you have the content digitized in your possession, you have to keep in mind that there may be copyright issues involved. So you may not just publish them freely without, but that's a different conversation. Continuing in the definition of data formats, most types formats listed above pertain to both the humanities and the sciences. That's what I was pointing out before: social, natural, formal, and applied sciences. While researchers increasingly use digital technologies for data collection, some still rely upon non-digital formats, such as handwriting, drawing, analog recordings, etc. In this case, best practices recommend that research materials and data in non-digital formats are converted for the purpose of storage, preservation, presentation, or analysis. And this is another type of, we are not again anymore in the field of traditional materials, but you may have to collect codes, pieces of codes. And so now you have all this stuff, a lot of stuff you collected from the web or from a digital database, electronic databases. Some of them you found in traditional formats and you had converted. So you find yourself with a lot of material that you have acquired either in digital format or converted. And you put everything on your desktop, and your desktop is going to look like this. Is it true? No. Hopefully not. If your desktop looks like this, you're in big trouble. So there are different ways of storing your research data, your research materials. Some are individual. I'm going to look at some individual, and some are institutional. I will really, even if they're institutional, and you see all institutional options, I will really stress the importance of individual approaches, in the sense that you move to another institution. If all your data are stored in an institutional repository, what are you going to do? You're going to ask them, no. If you didn't preserve a copy yourself, or maybe you don't want to leave your research data with that institution now that you're moving to another institution. So it's very important that even if you use an institutional repository, more and more are becoming available, it's very important that what really matters to you, what's at the core of your research, remains with you wherever you go. When my brother was doing his PhD, was writing his dissertation, he would come to visit, or I would go to his house. He would go out for dinner. He would carry an external drive with himself. And I say, what are you doing? And he said, if something happens to my computer, no, I'm back to square one. I have to start again. That's all my research data from the last 10 years. And he's still sending me backup to be preserved in a foreign country, in a different continent, in case something happens. He may be a little bit over-concerned, but no, that's your life, that's your profession, that's your career to some extent. So it's important that you think properly, strategically, at ways to preserve it in a way that can be easily accessible, and it can be preserved in ways that exclude the possibility of loss. So the basic, I think you're familiar with the basic ways of individually stored information. So you can have the very basic one is the internal hard drive on your computer. Possibly more than one. You may have your work computer in your office, and then you have a laptop at home, and then you have a third computer in your cottage in the mountains, and so on, so the sea resort or whatever. And it's not duplication, multiplication. It may be redundant, but it's not too bad as an approach, at least in two places. Don't keep everything on your computer, because your computer drops, and the hard drive can still be searched, and data can be retrieved from a broken hard drive, but it's extremely expensive. And I would say it becomes more expensive now that there are alternative form of storage. External hard drive, there are different, again, is a device, is a material object. If I break it, it's broken. and the data are lost. Or sometimes they're faulty. You run into a situation where a portable hard drive, something died suddenly. Some are more reliable than others. Then the latest and the most popular now is the cloud storage, personal, public, hybrid. There are different ways. There's a whole movement started in Silicon Valley, of all places, by an older generation of computer scientists that is totally against cloud storage. They really emphasize the importance of keeping your data in your hands, under your own control. Once you put stuff in the cloud, it's basically sitting on a server owned by a corporation that can give access to the data or even sell parts of the data to others. We all know what Google and Amazon do and have done and will keep doing. And so it's up to you. I personally, what I put in the cloud, they can do whatever they want. There's nothing sensitive, but your research may include very sensitive data, or data that you don't want to be exposed to political analysis or to know. And of course, a combination of the above is very important. The advantage of the cloud is that the three computers that I was mentioning before, the one in your office, the laptop at home, the third one in the cottage in the mountains. With synchronization, you don't have to do anything. Once you add material in one side, it's going to update all the other sides. And that's the virtue of the cloud, because you're sending data information to a server, and the server distributes it to the different location under your own account. So it's very convenient. And I hear of institutions, not large institutions like the University of Hyderabad, but smaller colleges. I was, in October, I was an IT in a small conference of technologists who work in a theological seminary in North America. And not large institution, they put everything in the cloud, all the institutional documents, all the administrative documents, all the educational documents, lectures, they're all in the cloud. That was a plan acknowledged by the administration of the institution, and it seemed totally natural to them. And I was a little bit surprised, because we have no concerns for data usage and there are, of course, multiple locations require regular updates when folders and files are added, deleted, or modified. So that it keeps a little bit. It requires a little bit of attention. And I ran into a few situations where I copied folders here and there, and then I lost material. So it's very easy to not to update, but to update with a folder that is older than the one that you want. I mean, you have to be a little bit careful. And there are organizational and retention principles. How do you keep your things in order, basically? The fact that you put everything in one place or the other in multiple places doesn't mean that you'll be able to find it. It may be very difficult to find it if you don't organize it very well. So, typical situation, I work with students, and I show them, you create a folder for your class, you create a folder for your paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and then under each one. The computer is a wonderful creature because it forces you to think in terms of directories. Directories are folders, basically, and subdirectories and files. That's how the machine works. So it's not bad to give in and let yourself be guided by the machine, because the machine works if things are lined up in a certain way and organized in a certain way. This is one aspect of the computer as a machine that may be helpful to things along certain line when organizing your materials. So it's very important that you have a rationale and consistency. So if you create folders in certain ways, name them consistently. If you name, it's very important that you name file consistently. The criterion may be yours. Come up with the scheme that suits your own imagination and your own project, that fulfills the needs of the project, and then be consistent. Because let's say that you want to rename a whole bunch of files or folders. I mean, there are tools that allows you to do that. But if those tools behave more or less properly, depending on how consistent you have been in naming, in organizing your files. Then don't forget who needs to access this data. More and more research is a team group, and even in the humanities. In the science, it's always been teams. You see the listing of authors of an article, there are at least 3 to 5 or 7 or 8. In the humanities, there is the single author is still very common, but you see, especially in the information sciences, in library sciences, articles are co-signed by 2 or 3 or more authors. So you may, in the publication of the article is the last page, but quite often shared research approaches are very common. So, and that's why, quite often cloud storage, it comes very useful because it allows different team workers, different researchers to access the same documents, manipulate them, and then save them. So keep in mind, is it only you that you're going to need to access the data? If it's not only you, then you have to probably come up with an approach to store, to organize and name files that may be less cryptic or less open to misinterpretation. Formats and format conversion is very important. Keep in mind that you may be able to, or you may need to convert from one format to another. So the choice of, if you are allowed to choose from different formats, keep in mind formats that allow for easy conversion into other formats, like PDF, JPEGs, and different image versus textual formats. Storage implies preservation. Not necessarily, but it definitely implies preservation, and especially long term. You put stuff away, and in a way that allows you to preserve it. You may decide not to preserve it, but don't choose a path that will prevent you from preserving it. But preservation does not mean necessarily forever. It may, forever is a rather vague concept, but very, very, let's say very, very long term. You have to consider reuse, the extent to which you will need to use and reuse this data, and the extent to which, if you don't need to reuse them, you may want to have a drastic approach and discard your data, get rid of them, throw them away. One of the faculty members I interviewed, and I asked her, what is your retention, your personal retention policy? And she said, well, when I completed a project, a book project or so, I just throw everything away. That is fine, is acceptable. I hope she does not regret it. It implies that her projects are not referring to each other, because in 10 years she may work on a different book, on a different project, and she may need data that she threw away before. Then there is the institutional So it can be private or internal cloud storage, large organization, dedicated infrastructure in the organization data center, internally managed, firewall protected, single or multi-tenancy. So different departments can access. And then we are getting further away from the individual. And also, we're moving towards a type of data preservation that involves not the real beginning of your research, not the very raw data, but something that you are working on, but it's already at the stage that is presentable and shareable. And there are quite a different types of data repositories. Usually they are organizations that set up a structure and then it can be customized by member institution. Like in the case of Dataverse, is used by Harvard, MIT, and other institutions. And so you have the customized version that is the Harvard Dataverse. This space is the similar situation, is the organization, and then different member institutions, they license and they customize their own version. There's an expression, there's a keys in hand, and then you can then take the object and modify it to your needs. Of course, modify to your needs implies a good IT department. It's not something that a librarian can do for you. Figshare is another one. Zenodo. One that is very important in the social science, in Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research. The Qualitative Data Repository is another for social sciences. Some of them are very generic, so all kinds of disciplines can put their own data sets. There are some of them that are more field or subject, even subject specific. The open access directory actually provides the opportunity to search all the repositories that are available in a specific field. And it's very convenient. This presentation can be easily shared with anyone who is interested. So all these links, hyperlinks are here. I invite you, if you're interested, to access and explore some of these tools and resources. It's very interesting how you can really filter by subject, by area, but even by geographical. I was looking at certain field in India, and you can see what data repositories in that field are available in India. And the RE3 data is another very important one. The fair sharing registry. All these tend to be open access, by the way. And Nature's own recommended data repository, and especially the Nature, because of the nature of the publication, is focused on sciences, natural. A typical feature of these repositories are data management, so they manage data for you, storage, access, and reuse, data dissemination, they allow you for publication, discovery, and sharing. Data curation is a big and expanding field now, and reporting as statistics, which is increasingly required by institutions for funding, etc. It's important that you know how your data are used, by how many. And of course, all these institutional and cross-institutional repositories are ruled by practices, processes, and policies. And they work in both ways. From the individual through the institution, that's why I put it in parentheses, to the community research in your field, and back from the community through the institution to the individual. It's very rare that with these large data repositories, individuals deal directly with. You can, there is the option of individual researcher to upload their data sets into a data repository, but quite often it happens through the institution. And that's why I put the institution in parentheses, because it's not necessarily a required step, but quite often it passes through the institution. So you pass your data to some data curation specialist, a librarian, for example, specialized in that field, and they take care of uploading them in the. But of course, you have access. And these are typical data management practices, processes, and policies: data governance, data architecture, data storage. We saw data storage, data quality, the cleaning, integrity of data, data integration, interoperability, so moving data from one platform to another, and metadata, which means to what extent your data are described properly that affects the way that they can be retrieved and shared. Metadata is very important. Management, meaning be able to organize and retrieve, but also discovery. On the other side, if other researchers have access to your data, the capability to access them easily and to retrieve them, and of course of publishing and registering, listing and accounting. Data security is an important issue. It becomes more important in certain areas and in certain fields of research. You don't want your data to be exposed. You may not want them to be exposed for a number of reasons, especially in the medical and biological sciences. Data protection is a very important aspect. Data sharing and dissemination by individual or institutional participation in a data repository, that's what we've seen before. By uploading your data into a data repository, you have the possibility of having them accessed, if you wish so, by other. For example, in physics has been, at least for 10 to 20 years, pre-publication data is a big thing in many hard sciences. Much less so in the humanities, may be governed by institutional policies or agency regulation, especially in the biomedical field, in the sciences, and in business, of course, in business for a number of protective reasons. Also linked to ethical issues, data protection, and the example of the National Institute of Health data sharing policies. Data management is ruled by tools and practices, and here I just list a number of data management policies and tools that are available. MIT libraries, the ICPSR we saw before, Guide to Social Science Data Preparation and Archiving, the UK Data Service, how to prepare and manage data. Again, the UK Data Service, managing and sharing data. These are two different documents. And the DMP tool, data management policy or plan, I don't remember, is used by many institutions. I think Yale is using it in its open source tool. And this, I want to end back to the beginning of a very traditional image. After we expanded into the digital, into the cloud, into data storage repositories, I want to bring everything back to you as individuals and researchers who are the first to generate and to appropriate a certain amount of data, and therefore to decide what to do with them, how to deal with them. And the image of the books lined up on a shelf, which I always use as the key to it. When people say, "Oh, you went to library school, you're a librarian, what do you do?" And I say, "I arrange book on a shelf." And they say, "Oh yeah, is that it? I thought you were all, no, everything was digital." And I say, "Yes, but I give you a pile of books, and I give you a shelf, and I tell you to put the books on the shelf. How are you going to do it? And then it becomes complicated, because are you going to arrange them by size? Are you going to put them flat? Are you going to put them vertical? Are you going to put them by author? Are you going to alphabetize them by title? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a number of books arranged on a shelf is the very first step to organizing information and therefore to producing knowledge. Depending on the way that they are arranged on a shelf, they may be more or less accessible, and therefore they may slow down. If these are organized according to a classification system, and I take one volume and I put it somewhere else, you're not going to find it. Or it's going to take 2 hours instead of 5 seconds. So this is the essence of research. I would say this information science, but also the essence of research is a concatenation of the practical and the theoretical. The practical is represented by the shelf, the physical reality of the shelf, and the physical reality of the books. And the theoretical is the necessity to find a way to organize them in ways that they can be accessed and used for the purpose of research. And this is what I hope we all keep in mind when we acquire data, when we generate data, and we prepare to use them for our research. Thank you very much.
Now I request Professor Chandrasekhar to deliver a vote of thanks.
So now we reach the end of this wonderful event, kick-started by Professor Graziano Krätli. And I'm from non-science background, but I could get a lot of interesting information from his talk, like data types, data format. But what is very important for me is data storage, which is whether you are a science or non-science people, we have to be very careful about storing data. I always tell my student that after doing the experiment, keep the data properly and also have a backup. Otherwise, you can't write any papers or publications. So thanks for a wonderful lecture, and then we are almost, as I said, at the end of this event, and I thank on behalf of IOE and also University of Hyderabad for coming over here and delivering this lecture. And I also thank our Vice Chancellor, Professor Apparao, for presiding over this function. And thank you all once again, and there is a tea and cookies waiting outside, so don't miss it. Thank you.